I agree, but Andy Reid is Andy Reid, and he's going to do what he thinks. But I think they're in good hands with Matt Moore. I would be hesitant to mess with the franchise quarterback with Mahomes, but time will tell. Let's talk about Matt Schaub, who's set to start in Atlanta. When I was looking at your notes, I tend to think that I forgot he was in the league, but Matt Ryan is out. So, again, you're talking about a bad team anyways. So, from one Matt to another, go ahead.
Yeah, as you mentioned, obviously Matt Schaub is set to start this weekend for Atlanta. Matt Ryan is out. I'm personally thrilled. I can't wait to see some more of Matt Schaub. We haven't really seen much of him since that Hall of Fame game over the summer. But apart from that, obviously being based in Texas myself, I remember the Matt Schaub of old down in Houston when he was a sort of Pro Bowl caliber QB at one point. Even though it may have only been brief. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Let's be honest, I don't think we can expect too much from Atlanta at this point in time. I think we know this is not going to be their year, and I certainly don't think Schaub is as good a QB as Matt Ryan. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs this weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was Schaub's last season. Let's just put it that way. I think this, and who knows if Matt Ryan is back the following week, could this be Matt Schaub's last start?
Probably. All right, let's go on to the injuries. I know we have a few more minutes to go here. I want to make sure you cover everything. So we'll stay with the Jaguars, and then you can go right down and run them off.
Yes, Jaguars defensive tackle Marcel Darius is having surgery to repair a core muscle injury today. He will be out 4 to 6 weeks. That's a big loss for their defense. Josh Gordon, New England Patriots wide receiver, has been placed on IR by the Patriots. He hasn't really played to the level that expected this year, and he is expected to be released once healthy as a result. So it's a question now of do they release him before Wednesday, in which case he'll become a free agent, or after Wednesday, in which case he'll have to go through waivers. Now, if he goes through waivers, that could play into your home state team, Miami's hands, in which case perhaps they bring him in first of all, or they bring him into partner Alan Hearns and Devontae Parker, and maybe that offense starts to get at least marginally better. Who knows? That's just a theory there, but that's going to be something worth watching out for. Speaking of receivers, Adam Thielen is out this week for the Vikings against the Redskins. Obviously, that game is tonight, if I'm not mistaken, so keep a close eye out and see how they do without Thielen. They've got Stephon Diggs who's coming off of another fantastic week. And then finally, in terms of injuries, the Chargers have placed Forrest Lamp on IR, the offensive guard, so that's a loss for that offensive line. But yes, moving on to another injury, but a slightly different situation, which I wanted to get your opinion on. Kelechi Osemele, the offensive lineman for the Jets. So he's been told by doctors, he went to get a second opinion outside of the team because he was convinced that something was obviously wrong. He was told by his doctors that he needs surgery to repair a torn labrum in his shoulder. Now, the 8-year veteran was actually fined by the Jets for not practicing this week, and they have not authorized surgery. They believe he can carry on playing. The Jets' insurance provider has said that they will approve surgery. The Jets themselves have not, though. So it's an interesting situation. Osemele has decided to go forward with the surgery. The NFLPA have pledged their support to him, saying that he basically has a right to look after his body and go and get the help he needs. And it's an interesting one. How far do you push? How far can a player push their bodies until they need to step up and say, look, I'm too damaged here, I'm too injured, I need to go and get help. Now, according to Adam Schefter, if the Jets do not approve this surgery, he will have rights under the CBA enforced through legal process. So is he going to end up having to go up against the Jets in that regard? I hope not. Obviously, nobody wants to see that happen, but you can't blame him for wanting to put his body first at this point in time. How many Vicodins is he going to have to take otherwise? How much pain medication is he going to have to take in order to be able to play? It's ridiculous, in my opinion. I think he's done exactly the right thing in terms of putting his body first, but I was wondering what your thoughts on this are.
Yeah, Mel Farr is going to talk about it in a little while. I'll just give you my quick thoughts about it. Number one, the Jets are looking bad because if they ever want to get another free agent or anybody to go there, this is just a bad look on the organization.
Exactly.
But there's trains of thought. Sometimes players play through injuries. You'd like to think you can do it, but, I could go I'm mixed on this one. I could go either way. I just know it makes the Jets look bad. It just does.
It does. It really does make the Jets look bad. And it's a bit like the Redskins in a similar situation. Obviously, we've heard the situation with Trent Williams and how unhappy he was with their medical staff. And those sorts of things really do not reflect well on the team. And like you said, free agents are going to be looking at the team going, right, is this something I really want to risk if they're not going to help me out when I get hurt, because we know how much of a difficulty that is in terms of the NFL anyway, in terms of being dumped as soon as you're injured. So especially for younger players who aren't necessarily guaranteed as much, this is a real off-putting factor.
Yeah, I just think it's a bad PR move, and I don't know whether it's just a bad. I think it's just a bad PR move, is what it is, and I don't know. It could go either way. Mel Farr is probably more equipped to answer it than we are, but yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. It's certainly something I'll have to deal with without a doubt, and we'll see how it plays. So, Mel's more equipped to play it than we are, but I'm glad you brought it up. It's something that obviously has to be discussed. And you know what? I'll get a much better gauge on that situation, too, because, again, the Jets are playing the Jaguars this weekend in the first of two trips to the Sunshine State. Northern Florida this week, Southern Florida next week. So, as usual, Anthony, very, very good job, and we'll look forward to your updates on Tuesday. I think we're going to give you a little bit more time because you're going to have some trading deadline news you're going to talk about. So we'll make sure that you have enough time to cover all bases there. So we'll give you a little more extra time on Tuesday. So stay on top of things. But once again, Anthony Wood, thank you very much for being on the program, and have yourself a good weekend. And make sure you're loaded with info on Tuesday. Anything you want to add, Lewis, before Anthony goes?
No, I think he touched all bases.
Very good. All right. Listen, Anthony, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch with you over the weekend. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Okay? All right.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Take care.
Thank you. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about Lewis's favorite sport. We're going to talk about baseball. Okay. And why don't you talk about Game 2? That's what you can do if you want.
So the first 6 innings were actually pretty good. I mean, Verlander and Strasburg traded 2 runs across those 6 innings. And we saw Strasburg go out there. In the 6th inning, he kind of got rattled. I believe he threw nearly 120 pitches. And, he's been worked a lot this postseason. And to see what he did in that 6th inning, I don't know if you saw, but I believe he had the bases loaded. He drops a 3-2 curveball. The one thing about Steven Strasburg that I've always loved, and this goes back to when he was coached under Tony Gwynn at San Diego State, is he's always had elite command. I believe his strikeout-to-walk ratio is somewhere above 4, and it's something you're always going to get with Strasburg. He's very pinpoint with his control. He's always going to throw you a lot of strikes. He knows how to place 3 different pitches, and that's what has kind of made him such a great pitcher despite the injuries that he's suffered throughout the early part of his career.
And I'll go on the flip side of this because I want to go to the managerial changes, okay? Justin Verlander is 0-5 in the World Series in 6 starts. There's a guy that has Hall of Fame credentials, is going to get in the Hall of Fame. But, boy, his work in the World Series, it just isn't there. And
it goes back to 2012, too. I'll never forget my 16th birthday being at a Brews Room down off of Hillsborough for all my South Florida family and friends. And Pablo Sandoval, who would win World Series MVP that year, Verlander then still a member of the Detroit Tigers, coming off a fantastic season in a series in which we thought that the Tigers, Miguel Cabrera winning that first Triple Crown since, the days of Yaz and the 67 Miracle Red Sox. Verlander, who had another phenomenal year after, I believe he had a 2.64 ERA that year, if I remember, because that was the 2-year period where he was pretty much baseball's best pitcher. Sandoval hit 3 home runs in that game, in Game 1, and then he hit 2 off of Verlander, and Verlander's 6 innings pitched in that game. Yeah, I mean, Verlander's World Series pedigree isn't good. His overall postseason numbers, though, are really good. He's a 3.35 ERA. Actually did set a record last night. He surpassed John Smoltz, who ironically was calling the game with Joe Buck. Most postseason strikeouts ever, 200-plus strikeouts in the postseason. So Verlander's body of work in the postseason, it's really similar to his regular season. Regular season career ERA, I believe, is like 3.34, 3.35. His postseason ERA is the exact same. So he's been the exact same pitcher. We've just seen a lot of home runs given up by him, and that was his weakness. Kurt Suzuki last night, that big home run in the 7th inning, and Verlander's final line, he gave up 4 runs. But, Houston's been in trouble, and I think a little bit of that is the scandal that's going on around them. I don't know if you want to delve too much into that.
I don't. I got too many other things. The scandal is what it is. The assistant general manager, as I understand, got fired today.
He did, yes.
But I don't want to get into that. All I want to talk about is the fact that Verlander has struggled in the World Series. Doesn't diminish his Hall of Fame career. He's going in. He's got no hitters. The only place he hasn't won is in the World Series. Mm-hmm. But he has a ring.
Yeah, he does, and he did, in fact, pitch game in relief in Game 7 of the World Series, so I'll always give credit for a pitcher, especially one like Verlander, who's always been known as a workhorse and a throwback to older eras, for doing what he did in that Game 7 of that 2017 series.
Right, but this is no indictment. Again, all I'm going to do is one stat. I'm not going to go stat heavy on this, okay, like you will. 0-5, in 6 World Series starts, but he does have a championship ring, and he's been on some good teams. His Hall of Fame credentials are solid. With that said, we're going to go on to some of the managerial hirings, and then we'll let you get a little bit in before we bring on Nick Pugliese, okay? First of all, David Ross, 3-year contract with the Cubs, internal candidate, somebody very familiar. So what are your quick thoughts about that hire?
I mean, given the fact that he was John Lester's personal catcher dating back to the days of the Red Sox, and the fact that he caught Lester that first 2 years in Chicago when Lester signed that 7-year, $153 million deal, I believe it was. I love it from that perspective. I think he'll be able to work with Lester again and, kind of help Lester reestablish some of that old glory that he's had, because Lester's really not the same pitcher. I believe this is 2 consecutive seasons now with an ERA above 4. He had a horrible stretch in June and July, and I think a guy like Ross will help him there. I love the fact that he's got a good relationship with the likes of Rizzo and Bryant. Rizzo, who is in fact $14 million club option, we know that's going to get picked up. I mean, given the fact that, he knows Ross, and the fact that Rizzo has been, an all-star first baseman, one of the best all-around first basemen in the league, doesn't strike out. I loved it from that regard. Although what is strange about it, and the dichotomy with the Cubs right now, and the last thing I'll say about it is we have rumors surrounding Bryant and this possibility of him being traded. He had another fine season this year. The problem with him is he's had that ongoing shoulder problem for the last couple of years. And he did turn down a big extension from them last year, and there's rumors of him being traded. I would not be surprised if it happens. They do still have 2 more years of club control with him. So, I mean, they could wait until the offseason after 2020. But, again, if he gets traded, David Ross is going to have a hard time finding at-bats at third base.
Yeah, but you know what? You're going to have a year with him and Ross working together before they have to make the decision. And the one thing about the Cubs that I will say is they have deep pockets if they need to.
They do.
So, with that said, we'll go on to the next managerial hiring. Okay, that being Jace Tingler. He's only 38 years old. He's a guy that's managing winter ball at the moment. He's bilingual. And the Padres organization, there's international prospects there. He's been a major league player development field coordinator for the Texas Rangers. He ends up beating out Ron Washington, who was definitely a candidate for the job. And, of course, I heard inklings about Mike Scioscia, but it became apparent that they went with youth and the bilingual part to prepare for what they've got to do down the road. Your takes on that?
So at the beginning, I didn't necessarily understand the hiring, but given the fact that we've seen baseball trend in this direction of the young sabermetric inclined manager, and being that, he worked under John Daniels in Texas. Texas is very forward thinking as far as analytics is concerned. I like the hire, and I do enjoy the fact that he is bilingual. We've seen he's got guys like Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, very star players on that left side of the infield that he'll begin to develop a rapport with as he begins to establish himself in that organization. So I get it. I mean, I would have liked to have seen the likes of maybe a Buck Showalter go over there, and Machado did champion for him. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading about that. But, you really can't go wrong with these young managers. We saw Rocco Baldelli was managing the Minnesota Twins, and he led them to a 100-win season with very little of a starting rotation. So, it's going to be fun. I mean, they're still a team that's not going to win right now. The Giants are still rebuilding. They have a lot of prospects coming through. But I think, it is what it is. They essentially did hire another Andy Green, though. But we'll see, with the Padres, we'll see how it turns out. They just need to get over the hump and get back into the postseason. I believe they haven't been since 2009, so it's been a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've been one of those organizations that has struggled throughout the years. They have been in the World Series, I believe, twice, but fallen
84 and 98.
Right. Okay, on to the next managerial hiring. I know you want to talk about some MVP stuff, so I want to make sure we take care of the business at hand first. The hire I like the most, believe it or not, and I can't believe the Mets blew this one, but then again, we're talking about the Mets. But Joe Girardi, hired by the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that he beat for a World Series title. Great hire. I think that's a great move by the Phillies. And, again, he inherits Bryce Harper for whatever that's worth. I think it's a great hire. What do you think?
Listen, Joe Girardi, I'm glad he's not going to manage in New York again. I genuinely think he was a bit burnt out on that city after his 10 seasons there. But I think he is the right manager for Bryce Harper. Look, Bryce Harper's played under a lot of guys. I mean, he's played under Matt Williams, Dusty Baker, Dave Martinez, to name a few. Gabe Kapler last year. He's pretty much seen managers of all ilks. Kapler, the analytic-minded, Dusty Baker coming from the old school. Same with Matt Williams, although Matt Williams was very forward-thinking at the time of his hiring. But I think Girardi is the right guy for him, because if I know anything about Girardi, and I happen to have, I believe I've met him once or twice before, given that he used to reside in the Parkland area. So, I've seen him a few times before, But the thing with Girardi is he's a very no-nonsense kind of guy, and I'm gonna come out and say it right now. A lot of this Bryce Harper hate is very ill-afforded. A lot of this hate that comes toward him is him not living up to the expectations presented upon him when he was a 16-year-old hitting .502